1. I'm not sure how to describe whatever it is. I know this all sounds crazy. I've been told this forever. But here's what happened tonight. I was driving my partner and I home from my grandparents. On the last road home, that lasts about 7 miles, we start seeing this wavy and thick cloud. It was level, as in no matter if we moved up or down, a hill or bump, it stayed the same. It looked like a winding road or a long snake. I thought it was smoke at first, as that wouldn't be uncommon here. But I slowed down and rolled down the windows, and it certainly wasn't. I stuck my hand out through it, and it wasn't wet. It was definitely strange, and the further down the road we got, the thicker it got, to the point where I had to slow down to 20-ish to feel comfortable driving through it. We were turning onto their street, and I got this feeling. It feels similar to paranoia, but so extreme and channeled. It's a feeling that I'm familiar with feeling, and I know that it means that this thing is around. I don't know how to explain, how I understand. But it isn't always here. Here as in what I think to be this plane of existence. My partner is very in tune with seeing spirits, and they said they didn't quite feel like it was that. But they felt it at the same time, something anxiety-inducing and heavy. I can't exactly see it, but at the same time I can. I know that doesn't make any sense, but I don't know how else to say it. My partner has a medium-sized but fairly long wooded area behind their house. There is an entrance to somewhat of a path that we take to collect mushrooms, and as we pulled in, I knew that's where it was. We got inside and closed the curtains, but I couldn't turn my back to it. There's no physical way to describe seeing it, but I could in a way. I don't know that it has a physical shape or form, but it doesn't move instantaneously. I know when it's moving, but I can't quite see it move. We had to feed and water the guinea pigs, and while I was filling up water, the kitchen light flickered extremely unnaturally. We cleansed their room with incense, and as we were, it moved from the back forest area to the garden close to the house, on the side that was closest to the window in their room. I sat in the corner and stared until I couldn't any more. I was scared to close my eyes, to rub them. It felt like my back was ice cold with chills, but not just spine chills that come with anxiety or anything. It was almost constant, and it made it very hard to breathe. My partner agreed that the air was very thick and heavy with something grotesque. My far vision started to blur, and I felt close to passing out, or that I wanted to sleep, or just shut my eyes. Eventually had to, and as I did, it started to move again. I didn't open my eyes, I just kind of felt it. It moved far, far away into the field and then beyond it. It lingered for a long while, but at the same time, my partner said that rain was coming in shortly. It was gone. I don't know if that was or wasn't coincidental, but it felt necessary to include. I've experienced this, whatever it is, since I was about 10. I don't think I'm particularly adept to spirits or anything supernatural, but I'm not sure what this is. I'll happily answer any questions I can to the best of my ability. This hasn't happened in about 3 years, and I don't want it to become a regular occurrence. But I'd rather understand it than keep dealing with this. I've been called crazy, and I've heard all the doubts and excuses for everything. If anyone has any ideas or things I can look into, please let me know. Partner mentioned cryptids, but I really don't know much about them, and I'm not sure of what it would be. Another side note I'm adding as I'm typing this is that we have 9 cats, and none of them were freaking out or acting irregularly. I don't know what occurrences cats can and cannot detect, but that might be of some importance. 2. A few years ago now, we moved out of the home all the upcoming events I'll be talking about happened in. I really don't have a solid explanation for any of them, even after years of debating how they could have happened. And not all these stories are from my perspective. Some of my other family members and a friend contribute to these experiences. Also, me and my family are very religious and believe in a god and spirits. I don't know if us being superstitious could have affected our take on what happened in front of our eyes, but to me, they very much did happen. Anyways, rewinding years back to our old house where all this happened, I'll start with what I've experienced. I'm honestly still terrified by this first experience, and I remember how it all felt in the moment it happened. Me and my sister shared a room in that old home, and we had a bunk bed. She had the top bunk and I had the bottom bunk. I was sitting on my bed, I think reading or on my phone. Don't remember, but I was preoccupied. No one else was in the room with me, and I wasn't really paying attention to any of the background noises, like the heater or TV in the distant living room. The door was also shut, so really any other noises could have been drowned out. Clear as day, though, I remember hearing breathing coming from the top bunk. No one else in the room. Extra noises wouldn't have been that clear. It sounded like an old man heavy breathing right above me in that same room. I was terrified. I remember holding my breath and still hearing it. It was creepy, and I wasn't staying. I literally booked it out of my room. To this day, I don't know who it could have been, but it sure as hell wasn't me or my family. Unrelated to a man breathing above me, but I was also confronted with something big. In my parents' room, I remember sitting on their bed, doing homework, or something like that. It was just me again, but I swear to God I saw my great-grandma, recently passed away at the time, standing in the room with me. I could also feel a strong presence of something, as soon as I saw a glimpse of her. It was such a strong feeling. Tears came into my eyes, dude. I never have felt such a strong presence feeling since then, if that's how you describe it, but it felt so real. My last experience is just seeing shadow figures in the corner of my eyes. Easily could have been shadows playing tricks on me, but I just remember distinct humanoid figures in the corner of my vision, looking the way I saw them, then seeing nothing. Going to my family's stories now. I haven't asked them much about it, but my sister has had some. Once her and a friend of ours was over, we were in the basement watching something, and I told them I was going to go upstairs to get something. I didn't come down for a while, so they decided to come up and make popcorn while they waited. They did that and then started heading back down. As they were leaving the steps, they saw me down the hall, walking from my room to my parents' room. No big deal, but the thing is, I wasn't up there, I was downstairs. I came downstairs after they came up to get the popcorn, and I was waiting for them. No one else was home. 2 people saw this other person walk from room to room, but it wasn't me, and it wasn't anyone else. I still don't know who it could have been, but I hate it. I hate how we couldn't think of an explanation and still can't. My sister experienced other slight things, like ringing in the ears when she was in my parents' room, where I swear I felt that presence of somebody and saw my grandmother. Maybe some shadow figures, but outside of that, nothing else. Again, this could all have such an obvious, realistic explanation. But there's one detail that makes it feel all so wrong, you know? Just chilling. That house we lived in for 10 years had a secret literally none of us knew about until a year before we moved out. My mom was at one of our neighborhood's Halloween parties when she learned this. A neighbor told her years ago some man had killed himself in our home. The other neighbors tried shutting her up, so I feel like she wasn't making it up. Some secret the neighborhood didn't want other people knowing for a good reason. We have no idea what room or how he killed himself. But after my mom shared that with us, after we moved out, I haven't viewed that house the same. I'm just hoping someone has similar experiences or a better explanation than a haunting. But I honestly can't point it down to anything else. Again, me and my family are Christian and Catholic, but I don't want to be that one crazy lady and point to everything being ghosts. Anyone have an idea? Maybe tricks played by shadows for years, or maybe squeaking pipes that made us hear those other noises. It just all feels so wrong, not right. But I know I'll never be revisiting that home. I appreciate anyone who listened all through. God bless. 3. My husband and I moved into this house almost 3 years ago now, and in that time there have been only 2 very strange occurrences, and weirdly enough I didn't connect the 2 until now. Now I'm wondering, is there something here? Is there a name for this thing? The first incident happened around 2.5 years ago, I believe. It was shortly after we moved in. I actually posted about this on Glitch in the Matrix sub at the same time. The way our house is laid out, it's semi-open concept, where you have to come down a hallway from the front area into the kitchen and living room area, which occupies the same space. But there's a wall that partially obscures one side of the living room if you're in the kitchen. So, I was cooking dinner and my dog was lying at my feet, hoping for me to drop some food. My husband came down the hallway and went around the corner into the living room without saying a word, and my dog got up and followed him into the living room. I started talking about some work gossip while I cooked, basically droning on for a bit, with no response from my husband for several minutes. When I put the food into the oven to cook, I went to the living room, planning to sit down with him and wait. Except when I stepped around the wall, he wasn't there. Our dog was on the couch alone. A second later, I heard the basement door open. It's a noisy door, so there's no way he got up and went down while I was talking to him. Also, it would have been impossible for me not to see him go, since he would have had to walk back through the kitchen to go literally anywhere else in the house. He comes into the living room, and I immediately ask if he had been in there a minute ago. He looked genuinely confused and said he had been playing video games in the basement for over an hour. It was creepy and unsettling, but we both just kind of shrugged it off and embraced the spooky story as one to tell friends who came over to visit. Then the second thing happened. This was maybe 6 months ago, so about 2 years since the first. I tend to just sort of startle awake from dreams and then be fully awake. So I jolted awake and it was still dark out, but early morning dark. We have 2 dogs now and they sleep in the corner of our bedroom. My back was to them, and I heard my husband's voice clear as day, unmistakable, in a very quiet whisper praising the dogs, saying things like, "You're such good boys and I love you so much." This is 100% in character for him, so I didn't think too much of it. I just rolled over towards the sound, about to tell him I thought he was sweet, but when I rolled over he wasn't there. He wasn't in the bedroom at all. It was just me and the dogs. In the dark. I couldn't tell if the dogs were awake, but they were lying down calmly. The fact that this thing keeps impersonating my husband freaks me out. What could it be? It doesn't scare the dogs, and it has never done anything other than just be there. Should I be worried? 4. My boyfriend and I moved into this apartment back in March. When we first moved in, everything was fine. I've always been rather sensitive to the paranormal, and normally I can tell if a place is haunted immediately stepping foot into it. This apartment did not give me that feeling. Fast forward a month and a half of us living there, and I'm finishing unpacking. The last thing I unpacked was my dream catchers. Once I did that, strange things started happening. My boyfriend's son, he's 2.5, and for this story we'll call him Jack, stopped sleeping through the night. Putting him into bed became a feat. No matter how long we sat in the room with him, sometimes we'd sit for 3 hours waiting for him to fall asleep, or we would read upwards of 5 books to him. The moment we left, he'd start screaming, always pointing to his closet. The vibe in the house changed. I no longer felt alone. I was 7 months pregnant at this time, and the kids' room felt ice cold, even though the rest of the apartment was 78 degrees. You'd walk into that room and all the hairs would immediately stand up in your arm. One day I was putting Jack down for a nap, and he started his usual freakout. I asked him if he was scared. He said yes. I asked why, and he pointed behind me, and a sickening feeling came over me, and for some reason I asked, "Is there a man behind me?" And through his tears he nodded, yes. I looked, and nothing was behind me, but I felt a presence, and I couldn't put my finger on how the presence felt, whether it was malevolent or not. I finally got him calmed down and asleep, and we went on about our day, and it slipped my mind that it happened. The next week, it was just my boyfriend Jake and I home. Jake was sitting on the left side of the couch, while I was sitting on the right. We have 3 dogs and a cat. All the animals were sleeping at our feet in the living room with us, when Jake and I heard a loud bang at the end of the hallway. We both looked in that direction, and saw a step stool pick up 2 feet off the ground, then fly down the hallway and hit the linen closet door. All my dogs were awake now, with their hackles up looking at the hallway. It unnerved Jake and I, but we brushed it off, still acknowledging how weird it was. At this time, I was 8 months pregnant, and I was suffering extremely bad insomnia. Our bedroom is directly across from the bathroom. As I'd lay in bed at night, I'd see a shadow person lean his head from behind the door, and I'd feel it watching me. This began happening every single night. He'd just watch. It became my new normal. I told Jake about it, and he seemed unnerved but didn't say much. One night, Jake and I stayed up late watching a movie. I had to go to the bathroom, so I did, but I didn't turn on the light. Jake was still in the living room. I heard him get up, and he walked down the hallway. I saw him pause and look into our bedroom before he turned to the bathroom and saw me, and immediately fell back into the wall, and all the color drained from his body. I stepped towards him, and he stepped away from me. I asked him what was going on, because he was scaring me. "You were in the room?" I was confused, since I wasn't. "No, I saw you laying in bed. You were in the room." Now I can see the bed from the toilet, and I didn't see anything in there. We just went to bed afterwards, not knowing what to think of everything, since we started adding everything up. I saged the kids' room after this, and everything died down. The room finally warmed up. Jack stopped screaming about his closet. The dogs stopped barking at walls. I no longer saw the shadow man peering at me from behind the bathroom door, until last night. I gave birth to my son a month ago. I had him lay down in his crib in the kids' room, and he fell asleep. He started crying, so I went in there to check on him, and as I started spinning the motor for his mobile, something blocked Jack's spinning nightlight. The shadow man was in the doorway, so I fully turned around, and he was suddenly 2 feet away from me, and he stretched his arms out towards me, so I snatched my son into my arms, and he immediately disappeared. I ran to the kitchen where Jake was and told him. "Was he wearing a top hat?" he asked. My knowledge of the top hat man is that he is horrible, but I've been lucky enough to never encounter him. I told Jake no, and asked him what exactly he saw in our bedroom that night. He said whatever it was he saw was a carbon copy of me, even down to the clothes I was wearing that day. He didn't know which one was the real me. I asked him if he's seen any shadow people in the house, and he said only the top hat man once, but he's seen the top hat man since he was a kid. He believes he is attached to him. What is in my apartment, and why is it manifesting differently to us? I'm not aware of shadow people that can shapeshift, let alone mimic like that. I'm not aware of any ghosts who can shapeshift. Whatever is in the place, its presence is anything but welcoming. I'm worried it's after the kids. Any ideas what's happening in my house? 5. This didn't happen to me, but a friend who went hiking to Mount Lawu in Java, Indonesia. Mount Lawu is considered a sacred place by the locals, and people believe it is one of, if not the, most haunted mountains in Java. Many people have got lost up there, and some never been found. One case in particular, which I recall, is the disappearance of a young boy named Alvin, who went hiking up there with some of his friends on New Year's Eve a few years ago, and vanished without a trace. The rescue party gave up after weeks of combing the slopes trying to find him. He was last seen by other hikers near Pasar Dieng, or Pasar Setan, Dieng Market, or the Devil's Market, an empty grassland near the top, where many hikers have reported hearing mysterious disembodied voices, hence the name. A few years ago, my friend and 2 other hikers decided to climb the mountain. There are several marked trails which get to the top of Mount Lawu. The busiest is Chandicheto because it is one of the easier trails to pick up and the scenery up there is breathtaking. But the ascent takes longer. It is a footpath that gradually ascends through the pine forest, grasslands, and whatnot. He and 2 rookie thru-hikers took this trail. It was his first climb to the top of Mount Lawu. They had met on a hiker forum months before and decided to take the easier trail, since the other 2 guys had never attempted a mountain of this caliber before. It wasn't one of those busy days when they arrived, and there were only a handful of other hikers around. Anyway, their trip went smoothly at first. Soon they were joined by 2 other hikers from a nearby city. But after they broke through the thicket and passed through Pasar Dieng, my friend began to feel a little unease. And he then noticed something a little off with their hiking group. There were now 6 of them. Somebody else had joined them unnoticed. He looked around and stared at his fellow hikers one by one, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. They all looked familiar to him, which was confusing. He couldn't seem to recognize the odd one out, no matter how many times he counted and scrutinized their faces. And to make it even worse, he seemed to be the only one who had noticed this. He asked himself if he was becoming disoriented due to exhaustion or the cold. He started seeing glimpses of blurry silhouettes moving around them. He wanted to quit. He no longer felt excited about this hike. He didn't feel like he was going to make it another hour. But there was nothing he could do. They were already halfway to the top, and he was sure he would have no choice but to return alone if he decided to turn back. He had lost his bearings. He had no idea where he was or who he was with. When they finally reached the top, he collapsed in a heap. According to his friends, he then became delirious and started to speak of random creepy things, like them being followed by something and someone watching them in the fog. He even told them to just leave him there because he was going to die anyway, and to let his parents know how much he missed and loved them. It took them a few hours to calm him down and for him to regain his strength, and they decided to set up camp for the night. But the other guys also could not sleep that night. They could feel a presence with them. When the first lights of day appeared in the sky, they quickly dismantled their tents and packed away, and began their descent, which luckily only took a few hours down the slope, until they made it safely to base camp. My friend had to be rushed to the hospital, burning up with fever. He had made it through the night and down the mountain. Others like him weren't so lucky. Has anybody else ever experienced this other hiker phenomenon? Or something similar while climbing a mountain or trekking the wilderness? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 341. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button. Thank you kindly. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit earlier, you can support me through Patreon for as little or as much as you like a month. You can also buy merchandise on Hellfreezer's Teespring store. That's me, Hellfreezer, in case you didn't know. If you weren't new, then that's redundant information. I'm going to stop talking now. Actually, I can't stop talking, it's the outro. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, merchandise. The links to both of those are in the description. And if you'd like to make donations on a one-off basis, then you can do so during streams or videos like this one, whenever you like. While this is not required, it is super duper appreciated, and it helps keep the lights on. Except when I'm recording in the dark. But when I turn the lights on, you get the idea. Okay, now I don't think there's any other business today, so I'm going to move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: when you buy fancy bread from a grocery store, do you slice it into individual slices, or, to like me, do you tend to cut it up into quarters and slice it long ways so you can get the maximum crust on it? That's how I like it. Maximum crust. Put my some deli meat on there, some lettuce, some maybe some mustard, some other whatever dressings I'm in the mood for, and maybe some coleslaw, potato salad, and then I shove it in my face. Sometimes on a cold winter's day with some soup, which is also very nice. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now because I'm getting hungry. Food, I must have food. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.